Hello, this is Jonna, and welcome to Story Nori. I am back with another Hausa story from northern Nigeria. And our friend Umar is on the line from Kano, Nigeria.
Hi, Jana.
Hi, Umar. Lovely to have you here. I'm really excited for a new story. Which one have you picked for us this time?
Nice to speak to you this lovely day again. I've got an interesting story about a kind old woman.
Okay, so let's start the story. And Umar, please stay around to play the part of Gizo the spider and the bull. The Kind Old Woman. There was once an old woman who went to the forest daily to look for firewood. One day, she heard a deep groan when she was gathering fallen branches. It sounded like a large animal. At first she was frightened, but then, when it groaned again, she thought,
"That animal, whatever it is in pain."
And as she had a kind heart towards all living things, she ventured towards the sound. Eventually, she found a large bull who was very sick.
"Don't you worry,"
she said, stroking his head.
"I will take good care of you. I know all sorts of cures, for every disease."
Somehow, the sick bull understood. He summoned up all his remaining strength and staggered to his feet. Then he followed the old woman towards her home. On their way, they crossed paths with the bull's former owner.
"Hey, old woman, where are you taking my bull?"
The man called out with a mix of surprise and annoyance. The old woman pulled herself up, her ancient back as straight as a sword, and she spoke with a tongue that was just as sharp.
"Now listen here. Your bull was abandoned and full of suffering, he was."
"You're right,
Admitted the man.
he is very sick, and he smells rotten. We can't stand his stench anymore, so we drove him out into the woods to end his days."
When he said this, the old woman's eyes blazed. She wagged her finger and declared,
"It is wrong to abandon a living creature who has served you so well. Even if he is dying, I'm going to take him home now and look after him myself."
"You're wasting your time, old woman. He'll never recover."
The old woman continued, leading the bull towards her home. The villagers whispered praises and words of support as she passed by. When she reached home, she cleaned the bull, gave him water and medicine, and placed him on a comfortable bed of straw. His strength grew daily, and his once dull coat became radiant. The villagers marvelled at the old woman's good fortune. Word spread quickly to the bull's previous owner. He came to the old woman's house and demanded the return of his valuable animal. But the old woman stood her ground, telling him firmly,
"In days of despair and sickness deep, this bull you abandoned left to weep. I nurtured him with love and care. His strength restored, a majestic affair. With me he'll stay, no more to roam. No longer yours, he's found a new home."
The previous owner retreated, with his head hung low. Now all the while this drama unfolded, a spider called Gizo was watching. He was a tricky little fellow, with a knack of changing his form. He thought to himself,
Here's a situation where I can get a reward.
He was so excited that he danced on his 8 legs all the way to the palace of the king.
"Oh, great king! I have the most amazing news!"
Gizo exclaimed, bouncing up and down. The king, amused by the spider's antics, smiled and asked,
"What is it, little Gizo? What exciting news do you bring?"
"Before I share, please tell me how many eyes you have."
"I see you with my 2 eyes."
replied the king. Gizo's 8 magical eyes swirled and rotated as he continued.
"But your majesty, I have 8 watchful eyes. And you know what? My eyes are your spies. I see everything interesting in the land and report it all to you. So you have 10 eyes in total."
The king chuckled, intrigued by Gizo's explanation.
"Tell me, dear spider, what interesting news have you spied with your 8 watchful eyes?"
"I've seen an old woman blessed with a magnificent bull. His beauty rivals that of a king's possession. Furthermore, I've heard whispers that she stole this extraordinary creature."
That is indeed interesting information,"
said the king thoughtfully. He decided to send his servants to fetch the bull. Gizo was so sure that he would soon receive a fine reward that the hairs on his legs were trembling with excitement. But when the servants arrived at the old lady's house, the bull, now loyal to his kind-hearted saviour, refused to leave her side. He lowed.
"With strength and resolve, I proudly declare I won't depart from her loving care. When sickness plagued me, she healed my strife. This old woman is my guardian for life."
The servants were surprised at this defiance. They grew angry and threatened the old woman. But the huge beast began to snort and stamp his foot. The servants grew frightened and returned to the king with the tale of the bull's loyalty and gratitude. And so the king gave up the idea of confiscating the bull from the old lady, and Gizo did not get his reward.
"That old woman has got the better of me for now,"
he said, and then he thought,
"I still have more spider tricks up my many sleeves."
And so, with a bounce in his step, he scurried back to the old lady's village. His 8 fuzzy legs, ticklish with excitement, started doing what they did best, catching whispers and secrets floating on the breeze like an antenna. The village people said that the old woman was doing very well for herself. 3 beautiful young girls now lived with her and looked after her. They did all her work, gathered firewood, gathered food, cooked and cleaned.
"This is most interesting,"
thought Gizo to himself.
"I shall find out more."
And so he went to the old woman's house, disguised as a beggar. He held out his bowl and pleaded,
"Please, old woman, I have heard you have a kind heart. Give me some food, for I am hungry."
The beggar's plight touched the old woman. She clapped her hands, and Gizo saw 3 girls jump out of the belly of the bull.
"Girls, fetch some porridge for this poor beggar,"
commanded the old lady. And one of the girls took the beggar's empty bowl to the barn and filled it with food.
"This is most interesting indeed,"
whispered Gizo to himself.
"There is a reward to be gained from this wondrous story."
And so Gizo scampered back to the palace and hailed the king, saying,
"Sire, I bring you captivating news. But before I share, Tell me, how many ears do you truly possess?
The king replied,
Why, Gizo, I am listening to you with my 2 ears.
Indeed, your majesty. You may only have 2 ears, but in truth, you possess 10. My 8 keen legs are your listening posts. I detect every murmur, every whisper that stirs the air, and relay everything interesting to you.
Chuckling, the king replied,
Gizo, tell me what news you have heard with your 8 hairy legs.
And Gizo revealed,
Oh, great king! I have heard something extraordinary. The old woman has 3 remarkable girls who possess unmatched beauty and skills. Each of them is fit to marry a king.
That is indeed interesting news,
said the king.
If you can bring one of the girls to me, and she is as beautiful and skillful as you say, I shall marry her, and you shall have a reward.
This time Gizo left nothing to chance. He transformed himself into the appearance of a high-up official, the right-hand man of the king. Then he travelled to the village of the old woman. The 3 girls saw Gizo approaching the house, dressed in his fine court uniform. They immediately changed into their best clothes. They wanted to look their finest for such an honoured guest. He knocked on the door and asked the old woman for water. She invited him in. Gizo sat down in the cosy abode. The old woman turned to the first of the girls.
Dearie, could you please fetch some cool water for our esteemed guest?
The first girl looked down at her sparkling outfit, twirling a little to make the sequins catch the light.
Oh, I can't,
she pouted playfully.
I'm wearing my grandest gown. If I fetch water from the well, it might get all, splishy-splashy.
Not missing a beat, the old woman turned to the second girl with the same request.
But I can't either,
the second girl protested, flouncing the frills of her dress.
You see, I'm wearing my most fabulous frock. If I go fetching water, it could get all, soggy and droopy.
Then she turned to the third girl, the modest and kind-hearted Takisi.
Takisi, could you fetch some water for our guest?
Takisi, always good-natured, didn't mind a bit of dirt or mud on her dress. She got up, fetched the water, and returned with a smile. Once she was back, Gizo announced,
Takisi, the king wants to marry a kind and beautiful girl like you.
Takisi turned to the old woman for advice. After a moment, she answered,
I'd be honoured to meet the king.
When the king met Takisi, he was taken aback by her striking beauty and wisdom. Overjoyed, he forgot all about Gizo's reward. He and Takisi wed, living happily, though not quite ever after. After some time had passed, the king had to leave the palace to go and fight a war. While he was away, the women in the palace, including the king's aunts and sisters, bullied Takisi, for they were very jealous of her beauty and the king's love for her. They made her work, and work, and work, no matter how hot it was or how tired she was. Takisi began to grow weaker and weaker, and she even started to melt in the heat. In despair, she spoke to a little bird and asked him to fly to the king and tell him of her suffering. The bird flew straight to the king and sang in his ear.
They work her to the bone, the pain she cannot bear. In the palace, torment and cruelty fill the air. Tarkitsi, the queen, weakens day by day. Melted by the heat, her spirit begins to fray.
When the king heard the news, he was greatly alarmed. He thanked the bird for his loyalty and rewarded him. Then he left the battlefield and rushed home, where he found his Takise in a terrible state. She had become so hot and tired that she had melted into a puddle. In despair, he did not know what to do. He wept and cried.
Oh, you cruel palace people who bullied my beloved queen.
Now it so happened that Gizo the spider had seen all this, and he thought,
In every crisis there is an opportunity. Now I shall surely get my reward.
So he rushed to the old woman's house and told her everything that had happened. She immediately came to the palace with her herbs and medicines, which she poured into the puddle. The water sprang up like a fountain and took back the form of the lovely Takisi. The king was overjoyed to see his queen again and could not thank the old woman enough.
You must come and live in the palace, and all will give you respect like my own mother.
The old woman smiled and replied with grace,
I am content in my humble dwelling place. The joy of seeing Takise restored is my reward. No need for riches or a palace. My heart is assured.
Hey, what about me? Where's my reward?
asked Gizo. But the king was far too busy getting ready for his wonderful future life with Takisi to remember the tricky little spider. And I would like to say Gizo the spider learned a good lesson from this story. Do you think that from then on he resolved to use his cleverness only for good, kind and unselfish schemes? I'm not so sure. Are you? And that was the story of the kind old woman. Umar, do you think Gizo will ever learn to use his clever tricks for good causes?
Well, I think Gizo always believes that his intelligence, his cleverness, and his trick will always get him what he wants. But Gizo by now should have learned a lot of lessons. So time will tell. Let's hope in the future he will one day learn a lesson.
And what morals do you draw from this story?
First of all, this old woman has been so kind-hearted that she has some respect for a dying bull. So this story is teaching us to be respectful of animals, not only human beings. We know that respecting human beings is part of our cultures, our religions. Respecting animals also is as important.
Thank you for finding this unusual and amazing story for us.
You are welcome. You're very much welcome. This is something that I find very interesting. To be honest with you, I really love and enjoy this, and I'll be sharing with my people, and I'll be going to different schools that teach English to children and adults and show them the wonderful work, the wonderful thing, amazing work that Story Nori has been doing. With one interesting thing about Story Nori is that every story has two features, the textual feature and the audio feature. So this will help our students that are learning English to understand both the pronunciation of the English words and to improve their vocabulary. So I will be going around from one school to another, showing them the amazing work we have been doing, and I am very much happy to be part of this interestingly enthralling family, to be honest with you, of course.
Thank you, Umar. That's very kind of you. And before I go, I would also like to thank Abdul Rashid Hussain for helping Umar to record his part in such great audio quality. For now, Sayanjima from me, Jana, here at StoryNori.com.
Sai an jima, a huta lafiya.